Hello, I'm Liz Smith, Chief Administrative Officer here at SEPTA. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for an update on the King of Prussia Rail project focused on our refined route. This webinar is being recorded, and by attending the webinar, you are consenting to be recorded. Tonight, we're going to start first with our General Manager, Leslie Richards. Leslie?
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thanks for joining us today. We look forward to sharing with you the King of Prussia Rail refined route, as well as the many benefits this project has for southeastern Pennsylvania. I want to introduce myself because while I have attended many of these public meetings for King of Prussia Rail in the past, as a Montgomery County Commissioner, as well as the Secretary of Transportation for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, this is my first one as General Manager of SEPTA. I've always been a big fan of this project, and I'm thrilled to be in this role right now. The King of Prussia Rail fits into SEPTA's mission of delivering safe, reliable, sustainable, accessible, and customer-focused transit services. We are contributing to the region's economic vitality, the sustainability, as well as the enhanced quality of life that transit brings. King of Prussia is vital to improving southeastern Pennsylvania's economy and keeping our region competitive. And this project will connect the region like it has not been connected before here in southeastern PA. So King of Prussia Rail is one of SEPTA's projects of regional significance and will help accommodate existing demand, as well as significantly accelerate the rate of job growth in this region. As our chairman, Pat Dion, said, he's really captured it. We provided lifeline service to essential workers, and we're now focused on meeting the region's changing needs and preparing for future demands. King of Prussia Rail is a good investment for this region. What I want to make clear in the beginning is that we are going to explain where the funding is coming from, where this project fits in to our short-term and our long-term goals here, and we are also here to answer any questions that you may have. The refinements that you're about to hear is definitely a result of a community-driven process, and our team will go through the details of how we got here as well. I think you'll find this presentation extremely informative, and you will also understand the importance of this project to this region. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Liz, and we'll continue with the program tonight.
All right, great. Thanks, Leslie. All right, let's get started with our PowerPoint presentation, if we could get that up on the screen. Perfect. Thank you. Next slide, please. So we have quite a bit of ground to cover tonight, but I promise you we'll get through it as quickly as possible to leave as much time for questions and answers. We'll be covering an overview of the Norristown High-Speed Line, why the King of Prussia Rail project is critical, an update on project timeline. We'll walk you through the refined route and the rationale behind it, a description of KOP Rail and the 5 proposed stations. We'll be showing you a new 3D video and, of course, providing time for questions and answers. Next slide, please. You can use the chat box to ask questions for the presenters. If the chat box is not visible, click on the speech bubble icon in the lower right corner to make the chat box appear. Next slide, please. Our region is positioned to bounce back stronger than ever. SEPTA serves the 5 counties in southeastern Pennsylvania: Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, and Philadelphia. Together, these counties generate 42% of the state's economic activity, with 32% of its population on 5% of its land. This degree of economic productivity and density is not possible without transit to efficiently move people throughout the region. SEPTA's multimodal system provides critical mobility for residents of the 5 counties in southeastern Pennsylvania, fueling the economy of the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. King of Prussia Rail is a priority for SEPTA and is a win for residents, commuters, and employers. It's a project of regional significance that will further enhance Greater Philadelphia's competitiveness and attractiveness. This transformative transit project is an investment in southeastern Pennsylvania's future, supporting America's 9th most populous metropolitan area. COVID-19 makes this project even more essential. While some telework will continue post-COVID, many jobs in the King of Prussia area are not jobs where telework is possible, and providing this transit connection will continue to be vital. The King of Prussia Mall has seen increased shoppers during other times when we have all heard that nobody will be shopping in person again, and it is likely they will continue to buck that trend post-COVID as well. And regardless of COVID, transit is one of the key tools we have to fight climate change, which will continue to be a significant concern into the future. In fact, if we do see temporarily more people utilizing their cars for trips post-COVID, transit becomes even more essential to balance that auto usage and reduce congestion, especially in an area like King of Prussia. Center City, University City, and King of Prussia are the region's 3 largest employment centers. King of Prussia, in the upper left portion of this map, has approximately 60,000 jobs, making it the largest employment center in the Philadelphia suburbs. To get to these jobs, commuters currently must travel on congested roadways like the Schuylkill Expressway. There is a significant flow of people between Upper Merion Township and areas to the southeast, including Philadelphia. Of the 60,000 people who work in King of Prussia, approximately 15,000 come from south or southeast of the township. Approximately 5,000 of Upper Merion Township's residents currently work south or southeast of the township. Currently, the only transit option to KOP is via bus. SEPTA buses to King of Prussia, like the 124 and 125, are frequently caught in the same traffic on the Schuylkill Expressway. In March of 2016, the Inquirer even wrote an article about the 125 bus route titled "The Longest Ride." Typically, these bus routes are only on time 64% of the time due to this roadway congestion. Next slide, please. However, there is another option. The Norristown High-Speed Line currently provides high-speed service between 69th Street and Norristown and has a 95% on-time percentage. It is also the suburban route with the highest ridership, with approximately 11,000 daily weekday riders. Next slide, please. The Norristown High-Speed Line, shown here in solid purple, currently runs between Upper Darby and Norristown, serving the mainline area in Delaware and Montgomery counties with connecting service to Philadelphia. King of Prussia Rail, shown as a dashed purple line, will connect Center City, University City, and King of Prussia, Delaware Valley's 3 largest employment centers, shown here as orange circles, in 45 minutes, 25 minutes less than a typical bus or car commute on the Schuylkill Expressway. Next slide, please. KOP Rail is a 4-mile, 5-station proposed spur extension of the Norristown High-Speed Line to King of Prussia, the region's 3rd largest employment center and home to the nation's largest retail mall. The extension will go west from between the existing Hughes Park and DeKalb Street stations. The extension has 5 planned stations, all of which will be compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The King of Prussia Rail Line is anticipated to run as frequently as every 10 minutes during peak hours. Service to King of Prussia will be provided directly to and from 69th Street Transportation Center and Norristown Transportation Center. At 69th Street, riders will be able to get on a train to either King of Prussia or to Norristown. And at Norristown, riders will be able to get on a train to King of Prussia or to Upper Darby. From King of Prussia, riders will be able to go either to Norristown or 69th Street. Next slide, please. In addition to supporting SEPTA's mission, King of Prussia Rail connects community with opportunity. King of Prussia Rail promotes and strengthens regional growth, is a smart investment, is a convenient and reliable way to connect people, and is essential to evolving needs. Next slide, please. Driving between King of Prussia and Center City, Philadelphia on I-76 regularly takes 70 minutes. In fact, many of you hear every day that Schuylkill congestion is a regular part of the morning traffic report. A King of Prussia rail trip will take only 45 minutes between Center City and King of Prussia. This gives a typical commuter 25 minutes back each way, or 50 minutes per day. Next slide, please. King of Prussia Rail improves equity and quality of life in a variety of ways. It enables people without a car to access a wide range of jobs that are currently not accessible to them. It will save current transit commuters to Philadelphia an hour or more each way on the bus and will be an affordable transit ride. It enables students to arrive at school, college, and university classes on time, and employees to arrive at work on time, as well as arrive home on time after work. That will enable parents to pick up their kids from daycare on time. And most importantly, it will allow those with limited mobility that need to use a wheelchair, a walker, or a cane, those that have strollers and carts and bikes to access the SEPTA system. Accessibility is equity. Next slide, please. In addition to the benefits to riders, there are also benefits to the region. Construction will support American manufacturing and provide fair wage trade jobs to middle-class residents of the region, contributing to southeastern Pennsylvania's economic vitality and an enhanced quality of life. KOP Rail will create thousands of construction-related jobs, as well as stimulate up to 5.3 million square feet of new development. The rail line will also increase property values across the region, including significant increases in King of Prussia. Next slide, please. The estimated cost of the King of Prussia Rail project is currently $2 billion, very similar to other new rail projects around the country for cost per mile. This number does represent an increase from the previous cost shared of $1.3 billion. That increased cost reflects inflation from a previous construction year of 2015 to 2025. This shows that the longer we wait to build this project, the more we will see the cost of it increase. Inclusion of design refinements that were necessary due to public input, such as the shift of the alignment to the north side of the turnpike, and more accurate costs for real estate acquisition. The funding will come from a combination of federal, state, and other government jurisdictions, as well as public and private partnerships. SEPTA will be seeking project funding from the Federal Transit Administration's New Starts program, which funds extensions to fixed guideway systems such as the Norristown High-Speed Line. An additional $40 million is needed to fund the next phase of design and progressing the project in the FTA New Starts program. I want to emphasize that KOP Rail will seek federal funding separate from other local transportation projects and not redirect federal money from Philadelphia transportation needs or potential projects. Many regions have multiple projects in the pipeline at one given time. If this funding is not given to SEPTA for this project, this money will be given to projects at other transit agencies across the country. King of Prussia Rail and other major transit projects such as trolley modernization are not either-or propositions. Each project will be considered on its own merits for potential funding. If we don't make these investments now, our region will be left behind and be less competitive with other regions. Next slide, please. Here's a quick update on the project timeline and where we are on the project. Since the completion of the draft environmental impact statement and public hearing for KOP Rail in 2017, design development, engineering, and environmental analysis of the locally preferred alternative has continued. This work is integral to the successful completion of the final EIS and record of decision from the Federal Transit Administration, which is anticipated in early 2021. Refinements since 2017 include detailed engineering analysis of the rail alignment and guideway design, minor modifications to station locations and designs, initial assessments of potential property and environmental impacts, studies of rail operations, and other details. These design refinements are the direct result of community input, comments at the public hearings and other stakeholder meetings, coordination with affected property owners, engineering criteria, and continued review of the existing land use and future development opportunities. Next slide, please. Since the beginning of the KOP Rail project in 2012, public involvement has been a crucial part of the project. SEPTA has provided many opportunities for the public to become involved in the development of KOP Rail, as well as to provide input to the project team. From the alternatives analysis and draft environmental impact statement to the refined route, public input has helped to improve KOP Rail so that it can meet the evolving needs of our region. This includes optimizing the refined route further away from Brandywine Village and Valley Forge Homes neighborhoods through the Pennsylvania Turnpike King of Prussia Service Plaza. Public involvement included 100 public meetings and workshops during the 4-year alternatives analysis phase, 2 public hearings, 10 public information sessions, monthly core stakeholder meetings, outreach to businesses, 4 committees, and elected officials briefings. Extra care was taken to listen and address the concerns of neighbors who live close to the project. There were 16 community working group meetings and meetings with the Brandywine Village and Valley Forge home neighborhoods, as well as backyard visits. Next slide, please. I'd like to introduce Greg May, who is the Vice President and Pennsylvania Office Leader of HNTB, who will discuss the details of the refined route. HNTB has completed 15% design for KOP Rail. Greg?
Thank you, Liz. We can go to the next slide. We're going to start off with a 3D video of what KOP Rail will look like after it is built, and then we'll dive into some of the additional details. Because of potential bandwidth issues, we're showing a low resolution version of the video here, and a higher resolution video can be viewed on the project website and YouTube. Switch over to the video. KOP Rail is set the proposed extension of the Norristown High-Speed Line to King of Prussia, providing convenient, reliable, and affordable transportation. All stations will be fully accessible with elevator access to platforms. This rendering depicts the route for riders traveling outbound Okay, thank you. And for those who may have had challenges seeing the video, please follow the link in the chat window, and you can watch the full high-resolution video on the website or on YouTube. We can switch back to the presentation here at the next slide. So we'll talk a little bit about the route refinements and the 5 stations. The route was refined for travel time, rider experience, engineering criteria, and environmental needs. Specific route refinements include refining and updating the route to ensure it meets all current design requirements while balancing travel time and rider experience, adjusting the height of the rail guideway structure at different locations to meet engineering requirements, developing the stations and refining them to improve the areas where people will pick up and drop off passengers, as well as where people will walk near the station and allow for easy access to future development, and avoiding, to the extent possible and practical, sensitive environmental and community features. Next slide, please. The orange dashed line shows the most recently published line, known as the locally preferred alternative. The thick purple line shows the refined route as it stands today, which is a direct result of community input, comments at the public hearings and other stakeholder meetings, coordination with affected property owners, engineering criteria, and continued review of the existing land use and future development opportunities. In addition to minimizing the visual impacts for local homeowners, these refinements will benefit passengers, allowing for a smoother ride. Now we're going to take a look at design and station refinements in detail, starting with the station at Henderson Road in the east. Following the sequence we saw in the video, we'll work our way west along the refined route to the station at First and Moore. Next slide, please. Henderson Road Station was shifted slightly west to provide safe and convenient access from both the east and west side of Henderson Road and improve track layout and geometry and rail operations. The station, which bridges over Henderson Road, will be located just south of Solon Boulevard and the Henderson Square Shopping Center. This would still allow for potential Pennsylvania Turnpike interchange at this location in the future. Next slide, please. Station features include connection to shuttle bus service, bike access to and from the proposed Chester Valley Trail extension, passenger drop-off and pickup areas, ride-hailing accessibility, parking for 500 cars, strategically located to capture motorists traveling from US 202 before they would need to drive through the congested roadways of Upper Marion Township. Bike parking, and the station platform is fully accessible from both sides of Henderson Road with elevator access. Next slide, please. This is a view of the station looking north on Henderson Road, just past the Pennsylvania Turnpike overpass, and south of Solon Boulevard and the Henderson Square Shopping Center. Next slide. Moving slightly west, you can see the alignment was moved farther north of the Turnpike based on community input. The alignment was optimized through the Turnpike Service Plaza to avoid and minimize impacts to existing Turnpike infrastructure, such as stormwater basins, ramps, and driveways, and to improve constructability. Next slide. Because of public feedback from the residents of Brandywine Village and Valley Forge Homes, the line was shifted to the north side of the Pennsylvania Turnpike east of 202 and south of the Pennsylvania Turnpike west of 202. In this visualization, you can see how the line now crosses the Turnpike and 202 where they intersect to reduce the impacts to Brandywine Village and Valley Forge Homes. Next slide. This is what drivers will see when they are traveling northbound on 202 away from the King of Prussia Mall. Next slide. Allendale Road Station. Shifting the guideway as it turns from the Turnpike to the Allendale Road Station allows for fewer curves, providing a smoother ride, better rail operations, reduced noise, and alignment optimization. This also improves connectivity to the east side of Allendale Road. We plan on working with the community to figure out the best possible solutions for relocating the 9/11 Memorial and the firehouse. We know that this is a very sensitive subject, and we're going to treat this with the respect and compassion that it deserves. Next slide. The Allendale Road Station platform bridges over Allendale Road, just south of the intersection with Wills Boulevard, providing access to employment, dining, shopping, and the King of Prussia Mall. Station features include a connection to shuttle bus service, a pedestrian bridge connection to the King of Prussia Mall, passenger drop-off and pickup, ride-hailing accessibility, bike parking, and the station is fully accessible with elevator access to platforms. Next slide. This is a view from the platform looking over towards the mall. Next slide. Here you can see a rendering of what the pedestrian connection between the mall and the station will look like. Next slide. Mall Boulevard Station. Slightly further west, the Mall Boulevard Station was shifted west to improve riders' experience and provide better connectivity to riders on the north side of Mall Boulevard. Next slide, please. Station features here include connection to SEPTA bus and shuttle bus service, passenger drop-off and pickup, ride-hailing accessibility, access to employment, dining, shopping, future residences in the King of Prussia Mall, bike parking, and the station is again fully accessible with elevator access to platforms. This image shows the pedestrian bridge across Mall Boulevard to the mall parking lot and potential future developments. Next slide. Here's an image looking west, which highlights the connection between KOP Rail and SEPTA bus service, as you can see the bus loop on the right side of the picture. The station also provides capacity for connections to the Upper Marion Township Rambler and the KOP District's connector shuttle service. Next slide. First and American. The station near First Avenue and American Avenue was shifted to provide improved access to surrounding businesses and communities, and to provide improved geometry that results in a smoother ride. Shifting the rail structure from the center of First Avenue to the north side of First Avenue minimizes impacts to traffic and reduces potential impacts to roadway design and property access. Next slide. The First and American station was shifted slightly north to provide improved access to surrounding businesses and communities. Located at First Avenue and American Avenue and Clark Avenue, you can see on the left side of the screen, this station provides pedestrian access to Moore Park KOP via the First Avenue Linear Park, which connects on the left side of the screen here. Next slide. Station features include passenger drop-off and pickup areas, ride-hailing accessibilities, access to First Avenue Linear Park and Moore Park KOP, an opportunity for transit-oriented development, bike parking, and again, the station is fully accessible with elevator access to platform at both ends. Next slide, please. Here's a close-up view of the station at the platform level, looking east. This is a view of what First Avenue Linear Park could look like in the future after KOP Rail is built. The rendering looks west near the intersection of First Avenue and Park Avenue in Moore Park, KOP. Next slide. First and Moore Transportation Center. The terminal station was shifted slightly to the east, providing better access to businesses and residences around Moore Road, reducing impacts to surrounding properties and allowing for mixed-use redevelopment around the station, in addition to providing better connection to the First Avenue Linear Park, an existing multi-use trail. Moore Park KOP has mixed-use zoning that allows for a mix of commercial, residential, dining, retail, and industrial spaces. This final station will provide service to all. Next slide. Station features include a covered walkway from the parking garage to the station, connection to SEPTA bus service, kiss and ride-hailing accessibility, bike parking, and the station is fully accessible with elevator access to the platforms and to the parking garage. Go to the next slide, please. First and Moore Transportation Center is in close proximity to residences, businesses, and recreation and entertainment opportunities, like Valley Forge National Historical Park, Valley Forge Casino Resort, and a planned Topgolf. The First and Moore / Valley Forge Station and the Mall Boulevard Station are each around a mile from the KOP Town Center. As part of further efforts to develop the project, SEPTA will adjust bus routes and coordinate with local partners to develop shuttle service to serve surrounding destinations. SEPTA will also continue to coordinate with Upper Marion Township on a trail to connect the village at Valley Forge to the First and Moore / Valley Forge Station. The 15 or 20-minute walk is similar to the time it takes to walk from one end of the King of Prussia Mall to the other. Next slide, please. Passengers can board here to either go to Norristown Transportation Center or 69th Street, where they'll be able to connect to the Market Frankford line for service to University City and Center City. Next slide, please. There will be a 500-space parking garage strategically located to capture motorists traveling from US 422 before they would need to drive through the congested roadways of Upper Marion Township. The parking garage will also house the facilities for connections to SEPTA bus service. The transparent white buildings to the right of the parking garage highlight an opportunity for transit-oriented development in the future. Now, I'd like to turn the presentation back over to Liz Smith to talk about next steps for the project. Liz, I think you may be on mute.
Well, that happens at least once a day for probably everyone, right? Thanks, Greg. Next steps for the project include submitting the final Environmental Impact Statement, or FEIS, to the Federal Transit Administration for review. The FTA will then issue a Record of Decision, or ROD. After the FEIS ROD phase, the project will enter into final design. SEPTA will apply to the Federal Transit Administration's New Starts program, which is a discretionary and competitive federal grant program reliant on the development of a financial plan. SEPTA is currently working with our partners to develop a 20-year financial plan, considering a wide range of future funding opportunities that could include state, regional, or county funding, private investment, and innovative finance options. Next slide, please. If you would like to look at the refined route in more detail, we invite you to visit our online interactive map, which can be found at www.kingofprussiarail.com/interactive map. Next slide, please. We encourage you to visit the project website for more information and to sign up for our newsletter. You can also follow us on social media at KOP Rail for the latest updates. In the time that remains, we will answer questions that have been submitted during webinar registration or through the chat. In the event that we are not able to answer all of the questions that are submitted, please be sure to check the Frequently Asked Questions page of the King of Prussia Rail website, which we'll be working to update over the coming weeks with questions received this evening. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christina Arlt, who's part of our public outreach team, to facilitate the question and answer session.
Thanks, Liz. We're going to start out with the first question. We've had a lot of interest in how the project will be funded. So how will the project be funded? Will Montgomery County and/or Upper Marion Township have to pay for the cost of the project?
So SEPTA anticipates seeking funds for the project's construction from the Federal Transit Administration's New Starts program, which is meant to fund either new systems or extensions to existing systems, such as the Norristown High-Speed Line. The FTA evaluates and prioritizes the projects that it will fund through this program, and the rest of the funding will come from a combination of federal, state, and other governmental jurisdictions, as well as public and private partnerships. There is no plan to use an Upper Marion Township specific tax, and the next step will be to fund the next phase of design, which should cost approximately $40 million.
Great. We also had a lot of questions about COVID. So in light of the pandemic, we have received a number of questions about how the pandemic affected the King of Prussia Rail project. Has the pandemic affected the funding, the necessity, or the timeline of completing the project?
So I think the pandemic really proved that transit is an essential service. Without SEPTA, shelves don't get stocked, hospitals don't get cleaned, and the sick don't get cared for. While the pandemic has certainly reduced ridership on SEPTA, it has not reduced how critical it is to our region's post-COVID recovery. There will continue to be a great need to connect people to opportunities, including jobs, across the region. While some telework will continue post-COVID, many of the jobs in the King of Prussia area are not the type of jobs that where telework is possible. Additionally, the King of Prussia Mall has seen increased shoppers during other times when we all heard that online shopping was going to take over all of our brick and mortar retail stores. And we feel that post-COVID, King of Prussia Mall is going to continue to buck that trend and still be one of the most important retail destinations within our region. And regardless of COVID, transit is really one of the key tools we have to fight climate change. And that's going to continue to be a significant concern into the future, far past our post-COVID world. In fact, if we do see some more people utilizing cars for their trips, even temporarily, transit becomes even more essential to balance that auto usage out and reduce congestion, especially in an already congested area like King of Prussia.
Great, thanks. The next question is, what will the new fare on KOP Rail be?
So the fare has not been determined yet, but the current fare on the Norristown high-speed line is $2 per ride. As many of you heard, as of this summer, we made the first transfer free and just $1 for your next transfer if you have a SEPTA key card. If you're paying cash, the cost on the Norristown high-speed line is $2.50, and you must have exact change. The operator cannot make change. So currently using a SEPTA key card to go from Norristown or other locations on the Norristown high-speed line to Center City, Philadelphia, the cost is just $2, which is a pretty good deal.
Great. Are there any houses or businesses that will be taken as a result of the rail route? Will there be any compensation for property lessees who need to relocate their businesses as a result of the rail route? I think, Greg, maybe you can answer this question.
Sure. Although the King of Prussia is highly developed, SEPTA's refined route would utilize public right-of-way and minimize local property impacts in the community. At this time, no private residences will be a full take, and at this point, we're still evaluating businesses for takings. SEPTA is required to follow the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Act of 1970 to promote uniformity and fairness. This includes both acquisitions, which is the purchase of real estate, and relocation, which offers additional benefits should a business be displaced.
Great. Are there any plans to connect KOP Town Center to KOP Rail?
I'll take this one. Christina, thank you. We actually get this question quite a lot. So I'll start by saying we did perform a very rigorous alternatives analysis process, which looked at almost 30 different routes. And some of them did serve the King of Prussia Town Center or Village of Valley Forge area directly via Gulf Road. When making the decision on which of those routes would be our locally preferred alternative, we really had to consider what the area may need, not right now. It's easy to see all of that development and everything coming out of the ground right at this very moment, but to think about instead what the area may need 20 or 30 years from now. This is a big investment and needs to be a long-lasting investment. The route along First Avenue was selected instead of the Gulf Road route because over time it will serve more residents and more employees in the future based upon the existing zoning within Moore Park. And when we compared that to the Gulf Road route, we are going to see significant redevelopment because the town center is fully built out at this point for quite some time. However, SEPTA is still very committed to serving the town center via shuttles, walking, and trails. As we mentioned, the First and Moore Valley Forge Station and the Mall Boulevard Station are each just over a mile from the KOP Town Center, about a 15-minute walk or the distance from one end of the mall to the other. As part of further efforts to develop the project, we will be adjusting bus routes and coordinating with our local partners, including the KOP bid, to develop shuttle services to serve the surrounding destinations. We are also committing to working with Upper Merion Township on the Gulf Road Connector Trail, which would connect the Village of Valley Forge to the First and Moore and Valley Forge Station.
Great, thanks, Liz. Greg, do you want to handle the next one? It is, why is there no station planned near the Turnpike Service Plaza to serve Brandywine Village, the Doubletree Hotel, and the 251 DeKalb apartments?
Sure. So the Henderson Road Station will serve these locations. It's just under a mile from Brandywine Village, the Doubletree, and 251 DeKalb to that station. And as part of further efforts to develop the project, SEPTA will coordinate with local partners to develop shuttle services, as Liz has talked about, to serve the surrounding destinations. Other connections, including improved walking and bicycle access, will be considered as part of the overall project implementation.
Will any of the stations have turnstiles or fare gates like those at Norristown and 69th Street? Greg, maybe you can answer that one as well.
Yeah, sure. At this time, the station design calls for turnstiles at the stations as part of the fare collection system, similar to what you would see at Norristown Transportation Center.
How many cars would KOP Rail eliminate? Liz, do you want to handle that one?
Sure. So new rail service will provide more travel choices, which will allow existing drivers in the area to use other modes. We did have the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission travel demand model estimate the number of vehicle miles that could be reduced due to the project, and it told us that between 14.6 to 18.4 million fewer vehicle miles will be traveled in the region, resulting from increased transit ridership due to this project. In addition, land use changes will also result in new traffic patterns emerging over the long term that are not included in those numbers.
What will happen with the buses that currently serve King of Prussia? We've had about 4 questions come through that are all slightly related to this. So Greg, maybe you can handle that one?
Yeah, so the project will include an updated bus plan that shows how bus service could be changed to accommodate and connect with KOP Rail. And while changes are likely to occur to the bus service, the goal will be to improve mobility for all transit riders. And so those changes to existing bus routes will be finalized later on through the process in coordination with the public, and as further engineering design is developed and additional considerations on ridership and transit travel patterns are evaluated.
How can Upper Marion Township residents participate in the KOP Rail decisions? Liz, would you like to handle that one?
Sure. So as you saw in the presentation, public participation really has formed the foundation of this project, and it will continue to be a crucial part as we move forward. We'll continue to provide opportunities for the community and the public to participate in the process as the project moves forward. The best way to do so is to sign up to be on the project mailing list from the project website and follow the project on social media at KOP Rail for regular updates. That's also where you would learn about any additional meetings or other public participation opportunities for the project as they arise.
We have one question from a resident. I live in King of Prussia. Will the route hurt or help the value of my home? Liz, do you want to handle that one?
Sure. So a 2019 study performed by eConsult Solutions found that the KOP Rail project will generate a total property value premium of $2.5 billion, meaning essentially the project will pay for itself just in terms of property value increases. This includes about $1.8 billion in increased value for existing housing, both along the existing Norristown high-speed line and in King of Prussia. And so that value premium includes a total home value of $83 million, or about $31,600 per house for homes within 1 mile of the 5 proposed KOP Rail stations. We do see that the closer a home is located to one of our stations, the bigger the increase in property values are because of that walking connectivity, instead of being more than 1 mile out where you may have to drive or take a bus or a shuttle.
Thanks. We have a few clarification questions about the route itself. So one participant asks, did you just say that 69th Street to KOP will be one route, or is a transfer needed where it ties in? And then another participant asked about, will this be an express route from 69th Street to KOP, or will the train stop along the Norristown high-speed line? Greg, do you want to handle that one? Oh, Liz?
You want me to take it, Greg?
Either way, happy to handle that one.
Sure. So yes, it will be a one-seat ride from 69th Street to KOP. You will not have to transfer trains. You just have to make sure that you get on the right train. So when you're at 69th Street, you'll see trains lined up with a destination sign for King of Prussia, as well as trains lined up for destination of Norristown. So you just need to make sure you get on the KOP one, and it will shoot off on that spur, just like the video showed, and take you directly to KOP. We are still working towards, really thinking through the different service plans. There will be some level of an express option that gets you to KOP quickly, but also includes some targeted stops, high ridership stops along the Norristown high-speed line. But we're still working out the details of all of that.
Great. We had a couple questions about when construction is expected to begin. Greg, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, I think we're looking at revenue service between 2025 and 2027. And so you're looking at least a few years of construction before that. It is somewhat dependent upon how the project progresses and what the project delivery vehicle that SEPTA decides to go with for various elements of the project, whether that's design, bid, build, or design build scenario, that could impact the schedule a little bit, but it's several years out before construction, again with the 2025 to 2027 time frame for revenue service to be able to ride on the train from the new stations to Norristown or 69th Street.
Great. We had a question from a participant asking whether this presentation will be available online. So yes, it will be available online. A recording will be found on the King of Prussia website. The next question is about whether SEPTA will need to buy new trains or additional rolling stock. Greg, do you want to handle that?
Yeah, as Liz mentioned, the exact service plan is still being evaluated. There's been a couple scenarios that have been modeled and simulated, and as it looks right now, SEPTA will be adding onto the fleet about a half a dozen vehicles for the sort of the maximum service plan. Again, as the project is further developed and refined, that'll be evaluated and optimized in terms of the best service plan to deliver the projected ridership.
We had a question about whether SEPTA has filed applications for federal or state grants for this project yet. Liz, do you want to handle that?
Yeah, I don't believe that we have applied for any federal or state grants yet. We may have applied for one federal level transit-oriented development planning grant. And anyone on the SEPTA team, feel free to tell me if I'm right or wrong about that, but I'm fairly confident we got that application in. We're looking at probably applying to the FTA New Starts program. Greg, would it be accurate to say towards the end of 2021?
Well, you're looking at about probably 2022 timeline, but FTA gets involved prior to the full application, what they call entry into engineering, as you showed on the project timeline. That's what happens after the 30% design level, and that's officially into the FTA New Starts program. But ahead of that, FTA gets involved, and so there's what they call project development phase, and that would occur in 2021.
We had a question about shuttle buses. To what extent would circulator bus service be coordinated with KOP serving the last one or two stations? Greg, do you want to handle that?
Yeah, so part of that service plan that we talked about in terms of revisioning what the bus service plan is making sure that we're improving mobility solutions for folks. So there will be some changes, but they'll be coordinated with the right service connection with the KOP Rail, and also keeping in mind the existing ridership that travels on the bus system to optimize solutions for mobility as people look to connect their trips through KOP Rail.
We've had a few questions about bikeability. So will the stations have good bike to capability, and also will the bike parking be covered?
I can take that one. So there's definitely improvements that have been identified in the DBRPC station area study, which identified a number of improvements, infrastructure improvements in Upper Merion that could help improve mobility, not just for KOP Rail, but for the community as a whole, and it would work complementary to the KOP Rail project. In terms of bike parking at the stations, as the stations are further designed past the 15% design level, that's certainly something that can be looked at. I think in a number of instances, the proposed bike parking locations are already covered, and that's something that we'll evaluate and can consider as the project development continues.
Liz, can you take this one? How has a procurement method been determined for the construction of the project?
It has not yet. That's something that we're progressing right now internally. As we advance from 15 to 30% design, we will need to make progress on determining that procurement method. Greg, I'm not sure if you have anything to add.
Yeah, that's something that will be developed as part of, we talked about coordinating with FTA, working through the project development phase, and then into entry into engineering. With that includes developing a procurement and project delivery plan, which documents the proposed delivery of the project, whether that's design build, design bid build, or some other alternative delivery methodologies. And it will vary depending on what portion of the project we're talking about.
We had a question about whether the ADA accessibility at existing Norristown high-speed line stations will be upgraded as part of this project. Liz, do you want to handle that one?
Sure. So the scope of this King of Prussia Rail project really is primarily focused on the spur extension itself. We don't have any plans that are a part of this project to enhance the ADA improvements that are already planned at Norristown high-speed line stations within SEPTA's capital program. But as that capital program advances year after year at SEPTA, we'll be looking to see how we may be able to increase the number of accessible stations that we can provide. But that will happen as part of SEPTA's annual capital budgeting process, which also has a very heavy public input component to it.
We've had 2 questions related to noise. So are there any plans to increase the height of the noise walls as part of this plan? Liz, do you want to handle that?
Sure. As part of the work that we're doing now and that we will continue doing into design, we are required by the FTA to do a noise and vibrational analysis. And one of the rules with that analysis is that if SEPTA causes any increase in noise or vibration, we have to do what's called mitigate it. So if we increase the noise, in a certain area, we have to put in additional enhancements to the project to bring that noise level down to what it was if the project were not going to happen. So I'm not sure that we have all of those mitigations 100% finalized yet. But we are required to do that detailed noise analysis and make sure that wherever we are increasing noise, we are putting in methods to bring it back down to existing levels.
Just to add to that, Liz, I think, that's one of the refinements, part of the refinement process in the 15% design was to look at guideway geometry, how the track is physically laid out. And a number of improvements were developed there to do things like curve radiuses and other engineering issues to improve that noise issue. And so some of those have already been built into the design to reduce noise from what the previous alignment looked like.
We had a few questions about alternatives. So one person asked about restoring rail to Pottstown and whether there will be a pedestrian link to connect to Valley Forge stations. And then another person had a question about extending it to Phoenixville, Pottstown, or Reading. Liz, do you want to handle that one?
Sure. So we know that there are, a couple additional projects that are going on concurrently with KOP Rail that look at extending or restoring passenger rail service to Phoenixville, to Reading, to Pottstown. And SEPTA is an active participant in all of those studies. So we're making sure that that coordination happens between all of these projects so that it doesn't appear that each of these individual projects is moving forward in a vacuum. We have always said that we see the KOP Rail project as a phase 1 of a future extension of this line that goes further, likely up 422. We need to get through this phase first. It's a pretty heavy lift to get this phase 1 done, so our focus is there for now. As the additional projects to restore service to Phoenixville or Pottstown or Reading progress, we will, of course, be looking for opportunities to make sure that these projects all function together. As to specifically a pedestrian connection between stations, I don't think the other projects are quite there yet, but we're certainly going to be coming to the table and figuring out how to make this all work as one connected system.
And Greg, do you want to handle this one? There's a question, is the ridership projection still up to 9,500 new riders by 2040?
Yeah, so in terms of the ridership, that's something that was recently reevaluated as part of that environmental impact study effort and the final environmental impact statement, which is very near completion and publication. And so the ridership was modeled in another methodology that's more favored by the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, and the ridership numbers are very similar to what they were previously. So those projections overall haven't really changed. If anything, there might be a slight uptick in the numbers.
And I do just want to add that, that 9,500 ridership estimate is a conservative number. The way that the FTA requires us to do our ridership analysis for the New Starts program is a very conservative estimate, right? They're making an investment. They want to make sure if they're investing in a project like this that we can meet the ridership that we're putting out there. What we've been seeing across the country is for a lot of these New Starts projects, they're actually exceeding their FTA estimated ridership. And a lot of that is because they constrain you in certain ways. For instance, we have to estimate ridership assuming that nobody changes jobs or moves their residence as a result of the rail line. We know that that's not reality, that once that rail access is there, that people are going to start making different decisions. So we feel like the 9,500 is definitely on the lower side. It is a conservative estimate, and we do expect in reality that we'll see those numbers exceeded.
Great. Thanks, Liz. We're almost at time, so I'm going to turn it back over to Liz so that she can wrap it up. Thanks.
All right, great. Well, I just want to reiterate again, thank you to everyone that participated tonight. This part of the process is really important to us. We want to make sure that we get input from everyone on this project, whether you're a resident, whether you work there, whether you're an employer, whether you're just a very interested member of the public. This is really what these types of projects are all about, is getting this input and then bringing it back into the decisions that we're making. So we were happy to share our refined route with you tonight. If you have additional questions, you can always submit questions to the email address on the King of Prussia Rail website, which we posted in the comments tonight. It's www.kingofprussiarail.com. We are constantly updating information on the website and updating our frequently asked questions as we get additional comments and questions in. Again, you can follow us on social media at KOP Rail to get updates, as well as sign up to be a member of our mailing list on the project website. So again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We will be posting all of these materials to the website this evening so you can access them later. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thanks again for participating. Have a great night.